Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to The Startup with Monique LeRae, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, Los Angeles. It's your girl, Monique LeRae. Thank you for tuning in on Sunday at 4 o'clock. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Southern California. I literally just landed. I just got back from Chicago for a weekend of casting. We were doing some shoots for our pandemic film. So if you are someone who is, living through the pandemic, which is all of us, but has an interesting story, we would love to hear from you. If you're a healthcare provider or someone that's made something positive out of this time, we would love to interview you. We're doing interviews all over the country. So you can email us at capaquariusmedia@gmail.com, capaquariusmedia@gmail.com. But today we have the pleasure of having my friend and psychotherapist, Saman Khazani's back. Saman, how are you today?
Hi.
Hi.
I like this car thing. It's like I feel like I'm on Carpool Karaoke for half a second.
I know, right? Oh, you lead me to my point. I literally am doing the show from my car. Sometimes when you're a startup and you have a few things going, you have to run from the airport and do a podcast.
Totally.
So I'm living it for sure, but your background looks great. Where did you find your painting?
It's funny. It's actually, we were talking about this the last time I was here, but I got this at a garage sale.
Love it.
And I just felt, anything that makes me feel like I'm in, even if I can't be in the water, if psychologically I feel like I'm near the water, it calms me a little. So as soon as I walk in, it's like, boom.
Yes, absolutely. The colors are great, and it brings out your skin tone. Well, it's great to see you. And in case the viewers and listeners don't know who you are, why don't you tell us who you are?
Sure. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I consider myself a generalist, so I work with a very broad range of people and a wide range of struggles they're dealing with. I work with young children between 4 and 12. I work with adults, doing a little more psychodynamic therapy. I'm heavily influenced by Jungian psychology, and there's a lot of fun things that happens in there. It's challenging, but it's great work.
I bet no 2 days are the same for you. Like when you come to work via Zoom or however you do, I mean, you must just get the whole gamut of things.
Yeah, like anything, it has its repetitive parts, which is nice, and then it has things you just don't expect, and that does keep it interesting.
Yeah,
for
sure. And I think, it takes a certain kind of person to want to have a career like that, where every day's not the same and you have those surprises. And I know you shared on the last time you were here, the reason why you became a psychotherapist was just out of your own curiosity about your own psychoanalysis. Is that the right term? Your own psycho state.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you're right, which is why I like going there. Sometimes we use in the therapy room, there's a trigger or there's a pinch or there's a difficult feeling that comes up, and those moments are sometimes the most shift happens there. Those are the pregnant moments for sure.
Oh, the pregnant moments.
Yeah.
I listened to Abraham. I think you and I discussed her offline, Abraham Hicks, and she talks about those are like moments of contrast. So you're creating those difficult moments are contrast. So you decide what you don't want, and then you decide that what you do want. And they can be positive if you turn them into it, even though they don't feel like it sometimes.
Absolutely. I think that's really well said.
Okay, well, thanks. So you're back in the middle of what we thought was just going to be maybe a pandemic, and we'll have to figure that out somehow. And now, our world has shifted even more, rightfully so, some will say, with a lot of civil unrest and racial divides and tensions. And there's a lot of feeling out there on top of a pandemic. And I'm wondering, what we can take away in this moment, really connect with each other and what we could get out of this positive.
Yeah, well, I think everything has, there's this biopsychosocial dynamic to humanity, right? And it has all these different components to it. And there's a huge focus on the social right now. And I think a lot of people can speak about that very well. It's very relevant. But I think part of the reason you brought me on is to bring in that psychological element.
Yeah.
And it's so you can just feel the kind of woundedness that's coming up for people right now, because I like doing dream work. I think I mentioned that to you, and a lot of clients are bringing in dreams that are they're apocalyptic. There's a lot of tenseness and a lot of feeling like something's coming to an end, and it seems like such a reflection of the place we're in, that people are really grieving for humanity right now.
Sure.
They really
Sure.
are. They're feeling the collective. And then the question in that is, when you're grieving for humanity in a way that you feel so powerless, how do you feel power in that? And from the psychological perspective, I think this is really a time I like to step inside with people, inside themselves, and say, what is coming up for you in all of this? I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to say that one of the feelings that really come up for people with what's happening is the feeling of inferiority. Right? Because when we talk about all these things, when we talk, for instance, people talk about racism. What is racism? How do we explain that? I mean, one way of psychologically defining racism is someone projecting their own feeling of inferiority onto another, asking them to hold on to it, whether it's conscious or not, right? And then what happens is people might start to actually feel that or experience that and internalize that. And that's just one example of how I would like to help people stay in touch with the part of themselves that feels full and has something to offer and doesn't have to internalize that inferiority. What do you do?
I like that.
Yeah, so you don't take in what the world is telling you your value is, right? How do you stay in touch with your value when there's a lot coming at you and people are projecting it all onto you?
That's a really good point. And I guess that goes back to, the really down to earth and tangible thought of, I can only control what I do. My reaction, my feelings on things, my perspective, what I do next, what I don't do. And I think when things are not feeling so safe, when your business feels like it's 50-50 shot, you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You got to go inside. And I like what you're saying about highlighting the things that feel strong. For me lately, it's been taking some online courses. Like, I'm brushing up on my business courses, and that's created a place where I feel pretty good. I think, it's a really great time for people to take what you're saying and perhaps educate themselves on what Black people are talking about. Specifically speaking, the history of this country and the system it was built on, and the system that was, not built for us. And yet, a lot of us we still do well. There's still people who do really, really well in the Black community, even though. And
yeah.
So
you're saying it's a really good time for people to step back and learn a little bit, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Really learn about the experience of the other. And
I think it's a good thing, because I think, going from your original point about going to the strengths within yourself, perhaps learning about what people are saying could be a strength, like just teaching yourself. Even Black people, we can refresh ourselves on the history of it all, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. That's definitely a really valuable way to spend the time.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think is valuable or helpful for one if they say they don't feel very strong within themselves? What are some valuable exercises that they could do to strengthen those? Because it's like a muscle, right? You have to work it out, and confidence and finding value and strength in an unsafe time.
Sure. How does a person feel value, right? How does a person feel value? And I think so much of it comes in feeling seen, right? There's this interesting that happens in the therapeutic relationship where they say just the act of the person feeling seen in their story is uplifting and healing in its own way. And it's because being heard and being witnessed is a way of feeling more empowered, And I think
Yeah.
so the question becomes, in order to feel empowered, in order to feel strength, how do I feel seen? You know, and there's so many ways we do that, right? One way is through our voice. We express our truth, which we hold on to in so many different ways. I mean, I'm sure you can feel it right now. There's a time in which we're all talking around each other. And it's very hard to speak what's really happening inside of you. And that's what makes it tense. But when you're able to speak your truth, it's it releases something in you. It does fill you up in a way. Ego building ego strength is very much about how do I feel aligned with who I am, and how do I feel seen in who I am.
Yeah. And you know, that is actually goes right into perhaps why people are stepping out and protesting amongst the pandemic, putting themselves and others perhaps in not on purpose, of course, in more danger or long-term damage. They're asking for something else, but they're adding value to their cause, to the cause. And that's one way to get your voice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a voice being heard isn't just about a kind voice being heard, right? It's a voice of rage, a voice of desperation, a voice of wanting to be understood. I mean, we all have ways in which we'll do what we need to do to be heard when the time comes, right?
That's true. Yeah. I think I was speaking with you offline about an article I did. I started doing some article writing in this whole thing also as a way to get it out. I ranted on my Facebook a couple times. I figured that's probably not the healthiest way to handle it, and people are probably going to get tired of me bitching. But all right, where can I put this? And so I started doing an article, and last week or about 10 days ago, it's called "The Reason Why You Probably Lost a Few Friends Last Week." It's a really kind of ironic title. And a lot of people have been able to connect to the article because I think I was able to keep my ear to the ground, stay on social media and kind of observe people and what they were saying and how they were feeling and how they were fighting and who they were blocking and the hurt that they were showing about losing friends over this situation, over George Floyd, and having to confront what exactly that is. And, are you going to show up for your Black friends when you need them? And all we're asking is to be seen and to be able to live. So is that even a friend? I posed that question in the article. Like, we're just asking that our life matter. Just matter enough to live. And a lot of people have lost some friends in the last couple weeks, or acquaintances. So,
I think there's a real luxury in the work I do to be able to have those conversations. There's a way in which, like, somebody could come in and they could say something that in your waking life, you wouldn't have it for a second. Right. And, and there's almost this weird, like, inner oath or this feeling that when this person comes to me with this, my first line is to go towards, okay, tell me more about that. Tell me more about why you have that feeling. Tell me more about why this is your perspective, even if it's something that I disagree with, or I feel feels like a violation of some kind, It kind of pushes me to have the conversation in a way that's not easy to have outside, in a way, because there's this assumed kind of
it's a safe box.
Yeah, it's just a unconditional desire to understand what's in front of you, because out in the world, when it gets too much, sometimes we say, hey, we can't have this conversation anymore. We can't make it our responsibility to have people understand this anymore. But in the therapy room, there's a way in which it feels like an endless search to understand the what's in front of you. And so I think I have to deal with it less than a lot of people do, and I can acknowledge that.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying. It is it's good to have those outlets. You got to let some air out of the tire, or else, I mean, what are we going to do? And
that it's interesting you say that, though, because one thing you find often in therapy is that catharsis doesn't always lead to relief. So it's important to let go, but it also, I don't know if you've ever found this with something where, you can keep going and getting it out, but you don't necessarily feel emptied.
Yeah, it's a deeper well than you thought you had.
Yeah, I think that's
Level
good.
water
That's
in that
a good way to
well.
put it, yeah. It's a deeper well. Yeah.
It's a deeper well. Yeah, you know, you bring up some really cool. It's like when I speak to you, it's like we're opening up all these other little tabs in the
Totally.
web browser, which
Totally.
is, but it's okay. And you know, there's a lot of different conversations happening, and I want to bring this back to business because you know this is the startup. What do you find for people who might want to get into your profession? What do you find as maybe a peaceful antidote for them if they're thinking about getting in the psychotherapy world, in the mental health space? Someone's out there about to choose their major. What would you offer for them?
I'm having trouble understanding the question, but that's.
I know. I sometimes. Well, you know, if they are not sure they want to get into it, what would you offer? Yeah, that because you love what you do.
I do. I think
Yeah.
it's yeah. What would I offer? I'd say
You know, bring them over on your side.
yeah, totally. I'd say once you get a better sense of yourself, you know, because I was in a program where the whole idea is it's an inside out approach. So the more into yourself you go and the more you understand yourself, the more harmony you're going to feel out there in the world, you know? And I would think a lot of people, it's hard to explain, but I always say, do it, you know, because it's not necessarily for the financial gain or all of that stuff, but it, I don't know how to explain it. It's like magic, you know, you know, you asked, okay, let's put it this way. You asked me at the beginning, you said never a dull day, right? It's kind of like that. It's like when you go to your church, you go to your temple, wherever you go, you immediately have a connection with God in a way. And the connection to God here is that there's always something provocative, always something mysterious, always more to understand about who's in front of you. And that's always a reflection of that there's more to understand about yourself. So you're constantly in this back and forth exploration of understanding the mystery of yourself and therefore the mystery of others. You know, it's like one time I remember I had a client and it was, you know, sometimes you can butt heads, right? You can be in different places. And I remember when I was an intern, the supervisor said to me, they said, oh, I'd have to keep working with this person. I said, oh, why? And they said, because I'd always be looking in the rearview mirror. I'd always be wondering what was going on, you know? And that constant fascination and search to understand what's happening in a person is fascinating to me. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but psyche isn't just mind. Psyche means soul. That's what it comes from. And it's the entirety of what makes you in the personal and the collective way. And I love that. And I know that sounds ambiguous, but I'm drawn to that psychotherapy. I live by the idea that without ambiguity, we're soulless. And I like that unknown piece. I feel like that's what draws me to it. And for some people, they're drawn to it in a different way, and that's okay too.
Well, it brings you that theory, your mission statement, if you will, that draws us back to your original point in the beginning about going within in the deeper place and going within when things aren't balanced around you and finding back to one. So that, you know, that soul, inner soul, psyche, that all that goes together. And it's an onion that you're always peeling and getting deeper, you know, into. I'm going to switch it up a little on you, and I hope you don't mind. And you can tell me if it's too deep, but I just think that it kind of naturally is flowing here. And before we go there, why don't you tell the listeners how they can find you? If they want a session, please plug away. We'd love to hear it.
Sure. Wow, that's a cliffhanger if I've ever heard one.
Good.
So,
Okay.
Sure. So they could find me on Instagram at To Be Human Psychotherapy. The 2 is TO, so it's To Be Human Psychotherapy. I'm on Facebook at Saman, Khazani, Marriage and Family Therapist. They can call me at 818-207. 818-207-4443, or they can email me at saman.khazani@gmail.com.
Are you really booked up these days, Saman?
It's getting more and more, but it's in a different kind of way, and it's interesting because more people have access to me right now, you know, because we're doing a lot of Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm also starting, this is kind of a switch up too, but I'm starting a psychotherapy group. It's going to be called Conscious Dating in Relationships. And for anybody in California who wants to take part, they can, because we're,
that's awesome.
yeah,
We need it. What are you saying? We need it in California. We're not woke. We need some dating tips in LA. You might not be off.
Especially now though, right? I mean, how do we bring ourselves fully into a place of intimacy in a time where there's so much disconnect, right? So
that's the title of your autobiography. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So they can reach out to me as well. And I'll be co-facilitating that with a psychotherapy colleague, Melissa's Cherry. So.
Very dope. I love it. Put some girl power on there. You go, boy.
Let's have different perspectives. Yeah.
I love it. And that's really timely because, you know, I always make fun of myself, but I'm on Bumble and that's just a disaster. Like who's going to be, you know, going out on dates right now? It's not going to work.
Well, yeah, we have this part of ourselves too, right? When you're dating right now, where you're kind of skipping through some of the steps that you didn't have to skip through before, because the need for safety is asked for so much earlier than it is in typical times. There's a way in which you're
absolutely right.
Asking for a lot more from a person very early on, and it forces a kind of closeness and intimacy.
Yeah, you're kind of like, do you want to be my quarantine boo or not? Let's do this thing. We're stuck for a year, baby. Let's get this train going, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have a few more minutes, and I thought I'd shift it up a little bit. And please tell me, you know, your take on what I'm saying, because you're really good about that. I'll if you guys haven't seen before, I'll throw Saman a question, and he'll be able to get it where it needs to be and land the plane. But sometimes I'm just curious, and I think in this climate, with people throwing around the word prejudice and racist, I really want to know what drives someone, in your view, from your professional perspective, to be a racist, to kind of just, you know, not have self-respect for themselves and others. I wonder what that's all about.
I think that goes back to what I said kind of at the beginning about inferiority. So racism in many ways is somebody has their own experience of inferiority that they are projecting onto another. And the need to project onto another comes often from not being self-aware enough, you know, and that's kind of learned. That's learned. I guess it depends on what kind of family you're brought up in, and how you're taught to communicate, and how you're taught to observe yourself versus observe others, you know. And a lot of people, when they're focused on what's happening outside of themselves, they'll say, oh, that's the bad thing over there. That's the bad thing. They don't really stop to check themselves in that moment. And so when you say what, you know, I'm not in a position of authority to say what creates racism. I can just tell you conceptually how I understand it. And because that's how I said as a projection, when I see it in front of me, I can kind of ask and question others to explore what's coming up for them in themselves. Say, hey, I notice, you know, this is something you're saying about this situation here, but what's happening for you that you're so upset about this?
See, and that's the thing people do not do. The fact that you would do that would be so great. I thought I turned my notifications off.
Well, let's be real. I mean, I have that luxury, right? Because I'm not like, as a guy, you know, it's a little bit different. As a brown man, it's a little bit different. Like I can hold grays a little bit more and ask those questions in a way, because I may not be carrying the same sensitivity to everything here. On a collective level, I'm feeling it, but on a personal level, I don't feel it necessarily in the same way. And because of that, I have the luxury and I feel the responsibility to hold those grays and to talk to people in that way. So I can see something that feels activating for me, but it's not so activating that I can't explore it. And I can do both. I can say, hey, this is, you know, as a therapist, I always say I'm not just validating and I'm not just challenging. I'm kind of doing both. I can talk to a person that I don't agree with and challenge their point of views. And I could see pieces of them that, you know, the child in them, the human in them, the pieces of them that are tender, even when they bring things my way I don't like. And I'm kind of lucky I get to do that. And I mean, I would recommend that to everyone if we had that capacity, but it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard process.
That's a great way to do it. And that's, I think, maybe where people are with their friends that they feel, or associates where this is coming out of the blue for them, like, whoa, you really feel this way? But they've had a relationship with them that they can actually say, well, what's coming up for you? Takes a big person to flip it though, and not make it about them, you know? So that's a really helpful thing to do.
Yeah, I think people tend not to be responsive the other way for me. You know, when I approach people from the other place, which is I first go to the part and thing in them I want to change, they just don't really respond. So I'm kind of left with a process of elimination. I'm kind of like, this is not the way to go about it for me, you know? You know, we hear.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I cut you off?
Thank you. No, but I have to cut you off because we have another guest.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Saman, for making time. And I know it's just Sunday. When will you start your couples group? And can you give us your plugs one more time?
Sure. Yeah. The conscious dating and relationship group is not started yet. We're building up the group right now, and people can just reach out and inquire about that if they're interested. The Instagram handle was To Be Human Psychotherapy. So TOBE Human Psychotherapy. The Facebook is Saman Khazani Marriage and Family Therapist. They can call at 818-207-4443, or they can email me at saman.khazani@gmail.com. And I'll keep working on
You'll do what you say?
I'll keep working on that plug.
Yes, no, you're great. Thank you again for coming and bringing some light, shedding some light and some insight and some psychotherapy on this whole thing. And we can't wait to see you again. I think we're going to check in with you in a few weeks. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. This is great.
Okay. Well, thanks for being part of the pandemic posse, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for including me. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. All right, you guys. That was Saman Khazani. Check him out. He's amazing. We're going to get CJ Lysette up